This is the 40th episode of our weekly program, God is Not White, where we take some time to go over the way people of African descent have negotiated our relationship with Judeo Christianity. And as we had done in the past, we've looked at the history, um, the history of Christianity. And to do the introduction, I spoke about how I got introduced to the faith, what my working definition of God is, and religion, and the difference between them, etc. And then for a few weeks now, we've been looking at how in current times, okay, in the news, we see the impact of religion in politics and in our daily lives, in particular with regards to the folks that surround the President of the United States. They sometimes self identify as white Christian nationalists. So we had a few programs on that and spoke about specific individuals. This evening, we want to take a time to make the connection between uh, religion and the use of Judeo Christianity as a tool of colonization and neocolonization, and how in the present time it affects the indigenous people of the Americas. So tonight we have a special focus on the indigenous people of the Americas, as in the month of October, as you know, there is a specific date, October the 12th, that is set aside to celebrate, indigenous people's resistance to colonization. And unfortunately, things that we thought were well established, well, we're seeing that nothing can be taken for granted, as this concept is currently being challenged. And so the title of our presentation this evening is Our Home on Native Land. For those of you who are not watching us uh, based in Canada, um, this line comes from the Canadian national anthem, where it says our home and native land. And a few people have sporadically made the point that, nah, this is not accurate. It is native land, it is our home, but it is not our home and, but rather our home on native land, unceded territory for most of that territory. In any case, those of you who followed this program regularly, you know that we had previous episodes where we discussed some aspects of this issue, specifically when we talked about the land acknowledgements. And as you know, we are also approaching what they are calling Thanksgiving. And so the idea here is to really give sincere thanks, as opposed to lip service, paying lip service to the peoples of the Americas. So I presume that our sound is A-OK, and that we do not have the challenge that we had last week with the sound. And so again, apologies for the late, for the fact that we had to redo this program. But in any case, we think that we have new information and material that we will be sharing with you. And so do not hesitate to go on the website, jafricaiti.com, where you will find one of the pieces that is titled God is Not White, where you can see all of the previous episodes. So we are now, this is the 40th episode. And like I said, tonight our focus is on Indigenous Resistance Day, or you could call it month of resistance, but it is important to make the point how the struggle of indigenous peoples of Africa and of the Americas have this connection that is in the space of resistance. And this is what we'll be talking about this evening. And so, to start properly, we pay due homage to the fallen resistors in the month of October. We are mindful that the great liberator of Haiti, the person who stopped racial slavery in 1804 with these Africans who decided that uh, this is not how human beings have to live their existence on earth. Jean-Jacques Dessalines, who was murdered on October the 17th, 1806, barely 2 years after the creation of the Empire of Haiti, built on the principles of Tout Moun Se Moun, and several of his comrades were murdered at the same time as he, as those who participated in this horrendous crime knew that there would have been, some of these generals who would have done everything possible to avenge the liberator of Haiti, Jean-Jacques Dessalines, respect pour lui tout temps. And so Boiron Tonnerre, who was arrested on the 17th of October, got killed on the evening of the 23rd to the 24th of October. Francois Capois, the date here identified is October the 19th. Some historians claim it's the 21st. In any case, he was also murdered on during that period in 1806 when the counter-revolution took over the great works of Jean-Jacques Dessalines and overthrew the revolution. A few decades later, Henri Christophe, the first and last king of Haiti, who was also a revolutionary general, saying that he was being betrayed and attacked, shot himself. They claim it was a suicide on October the 8th, 1820. And of course, we all can remember, as it's not that long ago, in 1987, October 15th, the white supremacist forces led by the French murdered Captain Thomas Isidore Sankara. Sankara, who really not only left us at the young age of 37 with an example of great courage, revolutionary spirit, but amazing sense of justice, wisdom, and just one of the many quotes that people enjoy to revisit from Thomas Sankara. I remind you, yes, he was only 37. Most of these men and women died, they were killed by the white supremacist forces before they reached the age of 40. Okay. Um, Thomas Sankara told us the revolution and women's liberation go together. We do not talk of women's emancipation as an act of charity or out of a surge of human compassion. It is a basic necessity for the revolution to triumph. Women hold up the other half of the sky. Yeah, the other half of the sky. This is amazing wisdom. And of course, you say, well, where are the women on your slide? Are there no women revolutionary who died in October? Of course, there are. They killed so many of our leaders. You will find them tall, short, male and female. And of course, the list of uh, heroes that have fallen in the month of October could never be exhaustive here. We're just giving some samples here. But Queen Ya Asantewa of the Ashanti Empire in Ghana today they call it Ghana, who was murdered on the same day as Emperor Jean-Jacques Dessalines in the year 1921, October 17th, really led amazing resistance against the British barbarians, who, of course, had taken over a large part of the African continent. We could name Rosa Parks, of course, who most folks who are in North America are familiar with her story. Now she's on US currency, etc., after much struggle and movement by people just to make the right thing, a reality. She was murdered she passed away on the 24th of October, 2005. We can also name Henrik Witbooi, who, led amazing resistance in the land of Namibia, and he passed away on October the 29th, 1905. And we could name the great Charlemagne Perrault in Haiti, who was captured and crucified on a door, right, by the U.S. Yankees on October the 31st, 1919. And here I leave those two last heroes to make the connection, right? Julius Nyerere, the first president of Tanzania, who said the United States is also a one party state, but with typical American extravagance, they have two of them. And this is a very interesting quote. As we are about to talk about, the current king of America, okay, and his folly, I thought it was appropriate to talk about this extravagance that is not only something shared by the Americans, but most white supremacists have that exaggerated sense of themselves, and so to make the link, again, nothing here is exhaustive. So if we were to put a number of indigenous people who've resisted colonization, Chief Tecumseh would not have been the only one. But we just, take this moment to pay homage to the Shawnee Chief Tecumseh, who was murdered on October the 5th, 1813. And so, for these men and women, we dedicate this episode. There are indeed very, very disturbing facts that keep emerging concerning the horrendous crimes endured by indigenous peoples in the Americas ever since they got overpowered by successful hordes of Europeans, 1492 onward. We spoke about the arrival of Christopher Columbus on previous episodes, and the idea is that this is not something that people are just talking about. It is documented. And part of that documentation comes from this report that was published not so long ago. And in fact, they're telling you that, one of the lawyers that was central in coming to the determination that what Canada has done is nothing less than genocide. Okay, how Canada committed genocide against indigenous peoples. This is explained by the lawyer central to the determination. And if you go to that website that is referenced later, you will see the details of how they came to that conclusion. And this is not to be taken lightly because, of course, there's every time you challenge the dominant narrative, there are people who try to sugarcoat it to, you know, and so this is very important work. And so the testimony of survivors, such as these young children who were taken in those residential schools, is how folks who are studying the matter now can arrive at these clear conclusions. Like I said, the missing and murdered indigenous women and girls report published in 2019 make the claim quite boldly, and there is no ambiguity about it. And it's, you have artists who made paintings and, such as the one illustrating here, but it's also the words of the people who survive this horrendous crime, their testimony, and the folks who clearly carry the wounds. As those of you who have been to Canada know that it is not only in the north, the far north, whether it is territories like the Nunavut or the Yukon, where I've had the privilege to visit some of these communities, but also in cities like Toronto and Montreal, you will see that the First Nations people are surviving and carrying much in terms of the scars of this encounter. Canada has demonstrated a continuing policy with varying motivations, but with an underlying intent that remain the same: to destroy indigenous peoples physically, biologically, and as social units. And so this is the backdrop to Donald Trump making this statement last month. Okay. You have these reports after reports showing how in the United States, in Canada, in much of North America, indigenous people, and of course, you all see how Mexicans, the survivors, the descendants of the Mayas, are being harassed in their former territory that was stolen by the US. And, they're erecting walls and doing all kinds of nonsense. Um, um, as if there wasn't enough in terms of resources to share. Okay. Uh, but the billionaires do not think about this possible solution. And so, in that one of these reports, it says as of September 2023, there were 28 First Nation communities across Canada that remain subject to long term water advisories, which alert communities when their water is not safe to drink. This is the kind of stuff we're talking about. That's how basic it is. Okay. This is happening at a time when, we had almost a decade when the Canadian government had surplus after surplus. So it's not that the money wasn't there or isn't there. And in fact, as someone who's worked in government, I can tell you almost every year they announce billions of dollars that are going to, solve the housing crisis among First Nations communities, the suicide rate, the like whatever measure you're going to take, the folks who end up in jail, Black and Indigenous Canadians. Okay, we are in those prisons as if we are the only ones committing crimes in the country. So it's not rocket science. And so if these monies are being released and you're not seeing any results, that's because what they claim to be doing is not what they're doing. It's not rocket science. And so it is in this backdrop that this head bully in chief, okay, Donald Trump, who stands accused of multiple pedophile crimes and who surrounds himself with like minded helpers in the US White House, simply decreed the other day Columbus Day is back. Just like that. Forrest Gump would have said. And no, we are not bad mouthing Donald Trump. It's in the news how many of his advisors and collaborators stand accused of horrendous crimes like sexually abusing 12-year-old girls, etc., etc. But as we have often mentioned in these programs, the temptation to, you know, push these things aside and saying, well, this is just Donald Trump, okay? No, this is not just Donald Trump. In fact, I was commenting on Facebook, someone who, you know, made a poster saying that Donald Trump is the first pedophile president of the United States. Sorry, no, that's not what history says, okay? Thomas Jefferson was president way before Donald Trump, and he raped 13-year-old Sally Heming, um, and kept his own children as enslaved human beings on his plantation. So we're not talking about some, you know, isolated thing. This is the nature of white supremacy as it has been established in North and South America. So this is a collective crime, and it needs to be addressed in such a manner so that real remedies can be found. So, like I said, it's not, you know, some kind of a error or mistake that some people were seriously, and apparently they are still thinking for next year to have Donald Trump's name in the list of people in contest for the Nobel Peace Prize. Okay, and you know the guy has wholeheartedly contributed to the genocide of Palestinians. He is threatening the people of Venezuela. Uh, well, not just threatening; he's been killing people in dropping bombs on them for the past few weeks. And so perhaps this is what he considers qualifies him for the Nobel Peace Prize, because, after all, the person who did get the prize has called on Benjamin Netanyahu and on Donald Trump to invade her own country, Venezuela. Why? Well, again, it doesn't matter how you try to escape it. At the heart of all of these weird, barbaric behaviors is the folly of racial superiority. I've had the privilege of visiting Venezuela on a few occasions, and I recall how, in a solidarity demonstration a few years back, we got acquainted with what the crime which happened in 2017 when a number of right-wing white Venezuelans, you know, set afire a black man who was accused of being a supporter of Hugo Chavez, a Chavista. Okay, Jose Orlando Figueroa. Probably did not pronounce his last name properly, but if you check it on YouTube, you will see this horrendous crime. So when you see that the folks who are supporting uh, Juan Guaido or Miss Machado in Venezuela today, they tend to be on the white supremacist side. And those same individuals are the ones who support those white supremacists that are part of the Ukrainian army. It cannot be a coincidence when it's also the same folks who are backing the 15 white mafia families in Haiti. This is because white supremacy was not overthrown. What we did was some kind of compromise to end racial slavery and to transform it into the prison industrial complex. That's why whether you go to Haiti, to Canada, to the United States, to Australia, the indigenous people are parked in jails. This is not coincidence. It's policy. And so this is what we're talking about here. Half-assed papal apology without reparations, followed by half-assed land acknowledgements without reparations, half-assed days of commemoration without an acre of land back. All of these things are just time being wasted. All of these fake gestures. Back then, when you had the Catholic priest Bartolomeo de las Casas pretending to be, protecting the so-called Indians or the Arawak people of the island of Haiti. And the brilliant idea he came up with is to go and kidnap Africans on the west coast of Africa to make them work the land. Okay? So these bastards could not imagine themselves working. Okay? But they had to subdue other human beings, and they kept it going for as long as they could until Dessalines said enough is enough. And so what we're saying is that these gestures, the Pope here coming to Canada and kissing the hands of an indigenous elder, that's not how you fix crimes against humanity. I'm sorry, but this is barbaric. This is cowardly. This Pope sits on a chair covered in gold. I mean, you don't need to go to Rome to see it. You just go on the internet and you'll see all of these pictures. And so whenever there is a crisis or, a hunger in certain part of the planet, you hear the Pope is praying Mary for salvation, for protection, to deliver the. Come on, dude, you're sitting on gold. You could at least melt that, and the funds generated could be donated, right? And the Vatican is also um, greatest land owner. Theft. They didn't buy those lands, they stole them. Okay. Just like the royal family in England. Okay. These major thieves cannot be sustained. We need to move to something else. And that's part of the proposal that we're going to share with you in a minute. So we're saying that from the get-go, there's an aura of inauthenticity surrounding gestures of superficial repentance registered in modern day North America. But there isn't just, one side doing things and everybody else is just suffering and taking it. No, no, no. The resistance has taken many forms, whether it is Hannah Wahiti Maipi Clark, who stands in the legislative chamber in New Zealand and tears apart, the document that endangers the well-being of her native people, the Maori of New Zealand. Uh, it is the people resisting and saying enough. Okay, this has to stop. Or the beautiful Afro-Canadian singer Julie Black, who stood during this NBA game and said, "No, no, 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 it's not our home and native land." While singing the Canadian national anthem, she said, "It is our home on native land." Short, small change in the sentence, but she made her point using her art, using her skill, using her opportunity to raise our awareness to the fact that no, we haven't. We have not done the first important steps for redemption, right? And so, as we looked at this picture of Chief Sitting Bull and his family in 1881 looking straight at us, the message is, do it right, do the right thing, make your contribution, whether you're someone who was born in these lands or whether you're someone who came from one of those countries that have been made inhospitable because of uh, United States imperialism, Canadian imperialism, European imperialism, and creating refugees unnecessarily, right? People living beautiful territories like the entire African continent, okay, to risk their lives. I was listening just this afternoon on the news how many Africans have perished crossing the Mediterranean just this year. Why? Okay, their territory is the richest on earth, richest in all kinds of uh, matters, whether it is for food production or minerals under the earth, for energy and everything. So why are they suffering? Because of greed, because we haven't done what is required. And the main culprit in all of this is the Judeo Christian civilization. There is no if, buts, or whatever. That's what it is. And so that's what we are questioning here. And so a few years back, in 2007, to be precise, a proposal was made to the Governor General of Canada at the time, Mrs. Michaëlle Jean, to push, to first welcome and then to endorse the idea that she would be the last Governor General of Canada, and that moving forward, Canadians would adopt a new title for their head of state. So, for those of you who are not in Canada, you may not be familiar with this, but uh, here, the way the government is set, the prime minister is the head of government, and the prime minister is an elected member of parliament. Okay, and so the government is really governed by the prime minister and his team of ministers, who are themselves also elected members of parliament. Okay, but the head of state, it's almost, something I would say that is symbolic. Okay, is a governor general, because technically it's the Queen of England or the King of England. So now it's this guy there who's supposed to be King of Canada. And so the Governor General, so Michaëlle Jean at the time, represented Queen Elizabeth. Just like now, it's a First Nations lady who's Governor General who represents the King of England, who is the head of state of Canada. Now, this is in 2025. Okay, when we have a so-called Prince Andrew, where all kinds of gymnastics is being done to hide the fact that the man is being accused of being a pedophile, to have abused a 17-year-old child, okay, who is now, after her death, they are publishing in the coming days. In fact, I think it is today, um, Miss Jeffries, her book detailing all of these folks who are rich and famous around the world, who are abusing children with Jeffrey Epstein, okay, involving Mossad, the Israeli Secret Service, all kinds of ugliness. Like, if there was a good time for countries like Canada, Jamaica, Barbados, and all of them to just get out of this thing, right? Well, Barbados kind of did. Um, but why can't these people work for real? I mean, my ancestors worked for 400 years without pay. Now, nobody's suggesting that these folks at Buckingham Palace work for 400 years without pay, but at least they could just work, because it is just makes no sense. I find it very insulting to have this First Lady, First Nations woman represent the King of England, the butcher of her people. All right. And so we suggested that from, during this modern time, that Canada adopts a new head of state, a new title for its head of state, which would be very much the same idea of having a um, symbolic or ceremonial position, but one that would make sense uh, with the idea of reconciliation, because we're using this word all the time. All these land acknowledgements, people say, well, this is the unceded territory of the Anishinaabe people, and then they say that and then they move on with their lives. No, to make it make sense, let's have a great grand chief of Canada who will indeed be a chief of the First Nations people, who will be the head of state of independent Canada. And then, the queen and the queen and all of these people in London will look for work. I don't think it's a radical idea. It should have been done years ago. In any case, this proposal was made back in 2007. Michael Jean sent me a letter of acknowledgement that, yeah, we received your piece, and yeah, and then that was that. She had no real power, but as governor general, as someone of African descent, I think um, it's something that she could have given a little bit of effort to at least have some people think about the idea. That said, um, more importantly, we proposed back in 2018 that we, the people, take it upon themselves to start the reparations that is required. Okay. The reason why it is so difficult for us who came from elsewhere. Okay, I'm talking here about us, people of African descent, who came to the Americas through the Mahafa, the Great Tribulation, the kidnappings and the displacement of our people. Uh, when we're talking about the First Nations people and the tribulation they went through, oftentimes people will try to put a wedge in between our peoples, reminding of facts such as the instances where indigenous people enslaved Africans. Yeah, this happened. It happened too. Okay. I mean, criminals, barbarian, or this mischievous behavior that human beings have is found in all peoples, regardless of skin tone and blah blah blah. So this is not about, these people are good and these people are bad. This is about historical fact and trying to undo some of the damage. And so, yes, if you look at the current predicament of the uh, native people of the Americas and the displaced native people of Africa, we have much healing to do. And this is why we've proposed back in 2018 that a central piece of the reparations movement from now on be a focus on the religious organizations, the businesses known as the Holy See Inc. or the Vatican, okay, multi-billion dollar business, okay, or the Anglican Church, the United Church, the Baptist Church, all of those organizations, just like you talk about the corporations, okay, the insurance companies, the banks, but the churches also, which took an active part in the enslavement, the kidnapping of indigenous people in Africa, and the enslavement and torture and erasure of indigenous people in the Americas, they need to be tried. And part of the reparations is that for all of these properties that they currently hold, they return the keys to the churches, to the cathedrals, so that the communities, wherever they are, whether it is in Chile, in Argentina, in Haiti, in Guadeloupe, in Montreal, in New York, these churches need to be returned to the communities of Black and Indigenous people so that they can transform those houses of torture into healing centers that we name remembrés. And as you see with the Sankofa bird here, symbolizing the opportunity to look back and to learn from the path that we've traveled in order to move forward in a better situation. And so, whereas if you enter a Catholic church or a Baptist or Seventh-day Adventist church today, you will see pictures of imaginary white Jesus, white Mary, white Joseph, and all kinds of imaginary folks that never existed. Well, once you've transformed it into a Remembré Center, then you are going to learn about the resistors. You're going to learn about Julius Nyerere. You're going to learn about Thomas Sankara. And you're going to learn about Jean-Jacques Dessalines. You're going to learn about Chief Tecumseh. You're going to learn about Zumbi de Palmores of Brazil. You're going to learn about Casilda of Colombia. You're going to learn about people who have resisted in Australia, the Yara Yara people who survived the assault on their people, the Maori people of New Zealand. These remembrance centers will help us catch up and erase some of the lies that have been introduced in history books, even in universities. Oh, yeah, Donald Trump is not going to be happy. The MAGA crowd will be very angry. But guess what? They are already a minority. And our children do not need to carry all of that burden of guilt and ugliness. And so I encourage you to take a look at this previous episode where we elaborated a little bit more on the idea of remembré. That was a show, it was episode 21st, aired on May the 20th, 2025. Well, it's not only bad news. There's plenty good news that I will share with you in the last segment of this program today. Yes, thankfully, an exciting development is also taking shape on the Canadian political landscape. This month, New Democratic Party candidate Eve Engler released an electoral platform which states, among other progressive stances, there must be recognition of underlying title of indigenous lands and support for genuine nation to nation relationships based on mutual respect and equality. This means working toward governance models that allow indigenous nations the autonomy to determine their own political structures, moving away from paternalistic frameworks that have dominated for too long. I really encourage you to take a look at the platform. You can see, you know, bold statements, calling for an end to colonialism and to have land back. Yes, those land acknowledgement crap, that's bullshit. Okay, like without returning some of the land to the people, you just better shut up. Okay, don't say anything because you're just insulting the people's intelligence. Okay, I mean, we see what's happening in Palestine. Okay, you're spending billions of dollars murdering scores of people because you want to steal land. So that's what matters. That's what has always mattered to you. So stop this land acknowledgement bullshit. All right. The people of Nunavut are sitting on, some oil and all kinds of precious metals, but you're letting them die. That's why they're letting them die. That's why they don't have health care. And you hear about some of these communities there in the Yukon. Okay, you hear such and such nation, and then you go there, it's 36 people with no resources, no help. What are you doing? And this is one of the richest countries in the world. And we send people to the moon and back, and we cannot solve this little administrative problem. No, that's because We refuse to be courageous. We refuse to do the right thing because the money is there, the resources are there, the know how is there, the science is there. We just don't have the soul to do the right thing. And so Eve Engler's platform is really exciting stuff. I can say that, Canadian politics have been mostly depressing for me. But this, I will register to the NDP. But I'm watching them, okay? Because these fools, there are some signs here that they're trying to um, reject his candidacy. Uh, I will not join the NDP if they dare do that, because they have no grounds to reject Brother Eve Engler's candidacy. Okay, it's just that Canadian politics has gone so far to the right that all we have now is right wing parties. Some of them have all kinds of lofty titles in their things, but it's all, you know, uh, right wing parties who are, fighting to see which one will cater to Israel the most, or which one will, jump as high as the Americans ask them to. Now, this is ridiculous for such a potentially beautiful country. Yeah. Anyway, good luck, brother Eve. Well, not luck, but courage in the struggle, brother. Okay, a few um, samples of what might be taught in remembré centers. People will learn about the Trail of Tears in the 1830s under the Indian Removal Act signed by President Andrew Jackson. Thousands of Native people, including the Cherokee, the Cree, Choctaw, Chickasaw, and Seminole nations, were forced from their ancestral homelands in the southeastern United States. Families were rounded up, homes were destroyed, and people were marched hundreds of miles to so called Indian Territory west of the Mississippi River in what is now Oklahoma. The journey was brutal, marked by hunger, disease, exhaustion, and exposure to the elements. Historical records estimate that as many as 4,000 Cherokee men, women, and children died during the forced relocation. Right? As many as 4,000 innocent Native Americans died on the evil Trail of Tears. They're asking, don't you think the truth about the Trail of Tears should be taught in America's schools? Well, of course, if you ask Donald Trump, he's going to tell you no. Yeah. Juana Ramirez, la avanzadora, was born a slave in 1790 in Chaguaramal in the state of Guarico, Venezuela, to Guadalupe, an African woman who was abducted, enslaved, and forced to work on the land owned by the wealthy Rojas family. She was a powerful force against Spanish commandeers and generals. One notable successful fight was against General Domingo de Monteverde on May the 25th, 1813. She commanded a squadron of women who charged the colonial invaders in the Battle of Alto de Godos, expelling them once and for all until independence was gained. And so, if Donald Trump and his fools uh, proceed with their threats against the people of Venezuela, I hope and pray that they are going to meet many Juana Ramirez to face them and defeat the evil gringos. Because I've been to Venezuela and I've seen these impoverished black children in Venezuela, these impoverished First Nations people, the survivors of the Maya people in Venezuela. They deserve to live happy lives. Venezuela is a rich territory. So why shouldn't the petroleum of Venezuela benefit the people of Venezuela? Why can a fool in Washington, D.C. or in Ottawa in Europe think that it's normal for them to go and attack these people and steal their oil. And the rest of us, billions of people on the planet, we're just sitting and watching that? Hell no. In a Remembré Center, we will learn about Juana Ramirez La Avanzadora. We will also learn about Brother Henson. Yes, we learn in 1852, French ethnologist Jean Mallory arrived in Greenland and encountered a dark skinned Inuit named Anuakak. When Mallory asked him about his father, the mom responded, the man responded with a name that left him speechless: Matthew Henson. Henson was no ordinary explorer. An African American, the son of formerly enslaved people, he became one of the most resilient and experienced men on Arctic expeditions. He accompanied Robert Peary on 7 voyages over more than 20 years. His strength, skill, and sleds on close relationship with the Inuit made him indispensable. On April 6, 1909, when his expedition reached the North Pole, it was he, not Peary, who arrived first. However, the glory went to someone else. Back in the United States, Henson lived in the silence of official history. He published his memoirs, worked in modest jobs, and died in 1955 without having received the recognition he deserved during his lifetime. But in the Arctic, he left an unexpected legacy. Like Peary, he formed bonds with Inuit women and had children. His children and grandchildren grew up in Greenland, ignored for decades by the Western world. It wasn't until 1986 that, as adults, some of them set foot for the first time in the country where their father was born. Henson, the forgotten explorer, proved that courage knows no skin color or borders. In an era marked by racism, he crossed the eternal ice and reached the northernmost point on the planet. His name rarely appears in textbooks, but in the Arctic sky, amid auroras and glaciers, his story continues to shine. End of quote. You can please check the Native American History Facebook page where I took this quote, and plenty of amazing stuff that we can learn and teach each other. And we think that it is important that we continue to share those stories from, the north in Nunavut all the way to Tierra del Fuego in Argentina, so that our people can learn, our various experiences without sugarcoating, just so that we can have better understanding of the challenges that we face uh, together as a human species. And by the way, yeah, I'll mention here that I always smile when I hear about, first man on the North Pole, first man South Pole. All of these things are really kind of like narcissistic, ridiculous stuff, because really most of these expeditions, natives of those places, whether it is Machu Picchu in Peru or Kilimanjaro in Africa, it's actually the native people who carry those so-called explorers. Okay, so I mean, I don't want to take any credit away from Matthew Henson and the others who, you know, um, took the risk to, climb those mountains. But again, let's shy away from this idea of being the first. We don't know how many men and women have done things before we arrive. This ego thing, I think, is not necessary. But the story of his encounter and his experience with the um, people, the Inuit, that's to be celebrated. You could also learn the story of Suzanne Laflèche. Suzanne Laflèche, who did amazing work as a nurse and then a medicine woman and learned, uh, um, went to medical school, and you can see the sculpture, the newly installed sculpture of Dr. Suzanne Laflèche Picot. She was the first Native American doctor in the United States. She was an Omaha tribal member who served Native and non Native alike. And now she has a hospital to her name. We say she also helped raise the funds to open Wat Hill Hospital in 1913. After her death in 1915, the facility was renamed the Dr. Suzanne Laflèche Picot Memorial Hospital. Again, check out the Native American History Facebook page. Okay, it's not all good, guys. The fool just killed two folks from Trinidad last week, claiming that he was fighting drug dealers off the coast of Venezuela. Since when did Americans have a problem with drug dealers? When the Drug Enforcement Administration, the DEA, is the biggest drug dealer around. Okay, I'm not saying that, you know, just like that. I mean, just look at the Manzanares case in Haiti, where the DEA was implicated up to their neck. All right. So, no, that's not what you're looking for, Donald Trump. You're looking to steal the people of Venezuela's oil, and we all know it. And so, those two Trinis that you killed, that's murder, okay, by the United States. And that's why, for a number of years now, since 2022, we've been calling on our brothers and sisters not to serve in the armies of these barbarians. Yes, we say get out of all racist criminal armies. We call on black soldiers worldwide, regardless of their national army, to refuse joining any imperialist invasion of Haiti, Niger, Mali, Burkina Faso, Venezuela, Palestine, all our countries that resist neocolonial slavers, insatiable terrorists, and mineral resources thieves. Get out of the wrong side, brothers and sisters. Okay, so we're not claiming credit for the fact that last week Navy Admiral Alvin Halsey, the head of U.S. Southern Command, announced that he is stepping down from the job. Unexpectedly, because usually these guys are supposed to stay longer. Um, in any case, better now than later. You should have done that long time ago, brother, because this means you've been part of the killing machine off the coast of Venezuela. Here we have this beautiful picture of brother Hugo Chavez with her brother Nicolas Maduro. Hugo, when he was president of Venezuela, the racist European structure there was fundamentally upset because an African person that is also an indigenous person, yes, he claimed both roots, was the head of state. Hugo Chavez was Venezuela's first black president, and I am, the Venezuelan elite was angry as hell. Okay, like I said, the young brother that they set afire, he was a black Venezuelan supporting Hugo Chavez. And so, indeed, we say there should be no black person in the world who supports the US-led coup in Venezuela. Not because there are black people in Venezuela, that's a good reason, but because those crimes are crimes against humanity. They're barbaric, and the motivation for these crimes is greed. It's nothing else. And if you've taken a look at who's around Donald Trump, you would know that he is surrounded by like-minded criminals. a former Fox News host who paid a settlement to avoid a sexual assault case, is Secretary of the Department of Defense. You find another one over the Department of Education, another one over the Department of Health and Human Services. And the one who is President of the United States, 34-time convicted felon and adjudicated rapist who has been accused of sexual assault by 26 women. That's the guy who is sending bombs off the coast of Venezuela because he wants them to have democracy. Yeah, just like Columbus brought us white Jesus. Right. Okay. That's all I had to share with you, brothers and sisters, this week. I hope you found some useful information in the program, and we bid you farewell. Until next time, let us see how my kids were negotiating their knowledge of Leonardo da Vinci a few decades.
Ok, nous allons jouer à Identifiez-moi le personnage. Alors, nous commençons. Ici
Toutankhamon.
Toutankhamon, ok.
À cause de sa grosse carcasse, puis il y a comme un serpent.
On y va, go. Monsieur Lamoukagi.
Moi, je pense que c'est la mère à Toutankhamon.
Elle n'avait pas de nom?
Non, je ne me rappelle pas. Thierry.
Tillé. La reine Tillé. Ok. Lui?
Oh oui, ça. Osiris.
Osiris. Osiris, ok.
Dessalines.
T'es d'accord? Certaine? Hein?
Ben, lui, il est dans mon livre de sciences. C'est Albert Einstein.
Ouais.
Leonardo da Vinci.
Ok, maintenant nous allons voir plusieurs personnages. On y va méthodiquement. Les-mêmes.
Et Christophe Colomb. Non,
Définitivement pas Colomb.
Henri Christophe.
Et ouais.
Pétion.
Donc si ça c'est Pétion, ça c'est...
Henri Christophe.
Non. Moun qui te fait mettre ensemble pour drapeau.
Dessalines.
C'est ça.
Léonard de Vinci. Léonard de Vinci.
Et toi, Nonon?
Ben, je sais pas.
Ok, n'a pas un petit bac.
Léonard de Vinci. Léonard de Vinci, ils ont la même face.
Et ça pourrait.
Ils se ressemblent aussi.
Ça, c'est Jésus.
Ça aussi, c'est Léonard de Vinci. La même face partout. Qui faisait des autoportraits.
Donc, Nonon? Ça c'est?
Léonard de Vinci.
Ça c'est?
Léonard de Vinci. Léonard de Vinci.